Hey again, everyone. For today's Pintober recipe, or Pintober video, I'm going to make a recipe of sourdough tortillas. I made these a couple of days ago, and it makes a dozen, and they were gone within 24 hours. They are delicious. They're very easy. I liked the feel of the dough. They cooked up very nicely. They didn't fall apart. They rolled out really well. I have made homemade tortillas before, but I've not made sourdough. So I was really happy to find this recipe. So I'm going to make this again. In my bowl, I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and a tablespoon of baking powder, and I'm just going to mix all this together with my pastry cutter. And I will probably put the Crisco in off camera, but her recipe calls, this is on reformationacres.com, and I'll link everything below. But her recipe calls for lard and butter. I don't have butter. I don't have lard, so I'm just using Crisco. Excuse me. Sorry. So let's see. It is a third of a cup of cold butter cut into cubes, and a third of a cup of Crisco. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, and I'll be right back. Oops, sorry. Okay, I am back. I have my third of a cup of butter, cold butter that's cubed, and yes, that is cubed. I did cube it. Doesn't look like it because I dumped it all in. The other day I spread it all out, but probably should have done that, but oh well. And a third of a cup of shortening. And I'm just going to cut this in just like you would a pie dough or biscuits or something like that, with a pastry cutter. Sometimes when I'm doing this step, especially for tortillas, I will use my fingers, but it was just as easy to do it with the pastry cutter. Now her recipe says to mix in the starter first and then cut in the butter and the lard. I'm not really sure how you would do that. So I did it this way, the way that I've always known how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera because you don't need to watch me do this. You know how to do this. And then I will be right back with the rest of the ingredients. Okay, I am back. I have cut in my butter and shortening into the flour, salt, and baking powder mixture. You can see kind of the texture this is. Some people say it has to be the texture of coarse meal. It has to resemble coarse meal. Other people say it has to have pea-size pieces of butter and shortening in it. I think sometimes people make it too complicated. It's just food. It doesn't have to be like where you measure the little pieces, and you just want some chunks and most of it cut in with the flour. I mean, just do it till it's done, you know. After you do it a few times, you know what it's supposed to look like. Okay, so I'll scrape that off in a minute. Then I'm going to add in 3/4 of a cup of my fed starter, and I've already measured this out, and I'm going to do this off camera because there's no way I'm going to get this in with one hand. And then I have a 1/2 cup of water that I've just put into a coffee cup and put in the microwave for 1.5 minutes. So it's really, really hot, and I'm trying not to drip any of that starter, because if you work with sourdough, you know that it's like glue, and if you get it on your table, you have to scrape it off. So I'm going to get this in and work in the starter with the flour, and there went my drip, see? Okay, you see how bubbly my starter is already? I fed it last night and getting it ready, started to use it this morning. So I'm going to get the rest of the starter in here and mix it up a little bit, and then bring you back to show you how I work in the water. Okay, my starter is in, and I just start off by stirring this around. I want to try to get as much of the flour touching the starter as I can at first before I mix in the water, but it's of course not all going to do that. So just as much as I can, because I don't want, like, this is hard to do with one hand. There we go. Apparently I'm going to be wearing a lot of flour today. You don't want like big clumps of sourdough that hasn't been mixed in with your flour and all that. Okay, so then I have a 1/2 cup of really, really, really hot water, and I'm going to mix that in. I'll mix it in a little bit with my spatula, and then I'll start mixing it in with my hands in just a minute. So I'm going to start doing that off camera, and I'll bring you back when I'm able to show you the next consistency. Okay, I have finished kneading it, and you'll see that at some point in time I switched over to my left hand, because for some reason, even though I'm right-handed, I do most of my kneading with my left hand, and it just felt awkward to use my right hand. So you can see that it's not sticking at all to my hands, and I have not added any more flour or any water or anything else than what I've shown you. It's not really smooth. You can see it's got some dimpling there, and that's okay. This texture is a little bit different than regular homemade tortillas, and I find that a lot of times sourdough does have just a bit different texture, and that's okay. It's going to turn out to be wonderful. So her recipe says to go ahead and divide this into 12 balls and then cover them up with a towel and let them rest. I didn't do that the other day because I have always found it easier to let my doughs rest immediately after I knead them, and then come back and work with them. So I'm going to cover this up with a towel and come back in about 30 minutes. It really doesn't need much longer than 30 minutes, but it does need that time for all of the flour to absorb the water and the sourdough. And it's not going to rise. There's certainly not enough time for it to do that. especially since there's no yeast in it. It might puff up a little bit because of the baking powder, but it's not going to like rise and double in size at all. You just want to let it rest, relax the gluten a little bit, and then it'll be much easier to work with and roll out. If you were to try to roll this out now, you would roll it out flat, and then it would shrink back up. And you would roll it out, and then it would shrink back up. So you don't want to try to do that right now. So I'm going to cover it up, and I'll see you in half an hour. Okay, my timer just went off. It's been 30 minutes, and I was going to take a few minutes while I was waiting on this to rest to kind of clean up the table a little bit and wash this. And so I got up, wanted to turn the TV off, so I started looking for the remote. Couldn't find it. Started to dig through the couches to look for it, and I found where one of my boys had stuck 3 rolls of Smarties underneath the cushion. So I'm teaching him a lesson. I'm eating his candy. I'm such a mean mom. But anyway, I'll teach him to hide candy from me. So anyway, he's gonna love me. Okay, so needless to say, I got distracted and I didn't clean up anything. I still didn't find the remote either. Oh, the joys of my life. All right, so let me use not the hand that I was sticking in my mouth. So this is the dough. It is so soft now. You can press on it and you feel it's relaxed. You turn it over and it's really soft on that side. So now it's time to divide it into 12 equal shapes. I've never really been good at that. I used to try to cut it in half with my hands and then hand quarter it and then divide each one of them by 3. Yeah, that never works for me. So what I try to do now is get it as round as possible. And like I said earlier, it's food. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to... I've seen people measure, like, weigh out things. And if I was going to enter this in some sort of contest, or if I was taking it somewhere where I wanted to be impressive, I would do that. But I'm not. This is, like, for my kids to eat because they love these tortillas. They love wraps. They'll stick anything in a wrap. Probably even Smarties, if they can find them anymore. So anyway, they're not even, when I roll them out, they're not going to be round. I can promise you that. They're not going to be pretty, but they're going to taste delicious. So the easiest way for me to find to get them in at least semi-equal shapes, and this is only because so that one of them's not huge and then one of them's like you can barely put anything in. I like to cut them, and I will cut this into like pie shape, and I'm going to try to do this with one hand. It might not be okay, but I'll probably speed through it. So cut here. See, it's not even perfect. And then, boom, halfway here. And then I'll just cut each one of them into 3. Okay, done. So now I'll roll these into 12 little balls, and as I'm rolling them, if one of them looks gigantic compared to the others, yes, I will stop and reshape it and try to get it semi-even. But unless they're just like really outrageously different, I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to roll these up and I'll bring you back. Okay, as you can see, my tortilla rolling skills leave a lot to be desired. They're not pretty, they're not round. If I wanted to make them pretty, I could put a plate on it and cut around it, but these are for my kids and for myself and my husband, and we're just gonna slap some chicken and beans and cheese and salsa and roll it up. That's all we're gonna do with it. Might have one who will slather it with Nutella or peanut butter and roll a banana up or an apple. That's fine too, but like I said, I'm not trying to win a contest here for pretty food. I can do pretty food, but not for something like an everyday thing. Okay, so I've had my griddle heating up, my electric griddle that is ancient. I've had it heating up for a while, and it's on the highest temperature, which is 400. So I'm not going to be able to do this with one hand because it will flip around, but see how easy this looks, and it doesn't tear. I'm just really happy with this this dough. So I'm going to put it on the griddle, and I will bring you back when I'm ready to flip it. Okay, I've got it hit on the griddle, and you can see it's already puffing up. It's only been on there maybe about 15-20 seconds so far. So I'm going to tell you while this is cooking, before I get any hate mail or anything about me eating the baby's candy a few minutes ago, I want to kind of go over a couple things. First of all, the baby is 13 years old. He is not a baby. Secondly, it's not Halloween yet, so this is not like stuff that he went to get trick-or-treating and he worked hard to get. This is candy that I bought. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this. It's got some bubbles, and you see some nice brown marks. And you want to cook it about 30 seconds, 45 seconds on this side, and then you're done. See how it's puffing up nicely? I love that. So anyway, this is not like trick-or-treating candy. He didn't work hard to get this, so it's okay. And thirdly, he is most certainly allowed to have candy, but he is most certainly not allowed to sneak candy. And if he feels the need to hide it in the couch cushion, then he most definitely does not need it. So that's how I feel about that. Here is the other side. I cook it usually maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds on the other side, and then it's done. I don't like to overcook them. I'm going to go ahead and straighten this out. I don't like to overcook them at the beginning because they tend to get a little crunchy if you do that. And remember, these are most likely going to be heated up again, either when you roll them. I like to put them in the microwave for about 15 seconds if they're not still hot from the griddle, or you put something in it and put it in the oven like a burrito or something. So I'm going to cover this up with a towel to keep it hot and soft while I get the rest of them done. And I'm not going to show you all of that. Here are my little 12 or 11 balls now. So I'm going to go ahead and get these rolled out and cooked, and I'll show you the finished product. Okay, so my last tortilla is just about ready to come off of the griddle, and here are my other 11, and they are just beautiful. They smell good. They're soft. I haven't tasted one of these yet, but I did eat some the other day, and they are really, really good. One of the things that I neglected to mention is because I'm cooking this on an electric griddle instead of like a cast iron skillet, and it only goes up to 400, about halfway through, I like to, after I get about half of them done, I like to go ahead and just pull everything off. I get one rolled out. Sometimes I cook 2 at a time depending on how fast I roll. But then I will just, I'm going to get this little piece off before it burns. There we go. I'll just let the griddle sit and get really good and hot again, because they seem to puff up better the hotter the griddle is. And as I'm cooking them, the griddle kind of cools off a little bit. But I only have to do that once in a dozen. And I'm really excited about these. These make about like maybe a breakfast burrito size. So I may try this again, maybe cutting 10 instead of 12 and seeing if I can get, seeing what size that would make. And the other thing about these that I do like is they don't have a really strong sourdough taste to them, which I really like the sourdough taste, but my husband really doesn't like a very strong sourdough taste. And that's probably because they don't have that taste because I've fed my starter recently. If I had used maybe a discard starter, they would have a stronger sourdough taste. So I might do that next just to see how that does. If you try this recipe and you do that, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to see how they come out. But these will be perfect for my family. I have one son who doesn't like a really strong sourdough taste either, but he is not as vocal about it as my husband is. So I try to make things with a less sourdough. Or if it's really strong, I just don't serve it to my husband. So anyway, those are my tortillas. I hope you try this recipe. I hope you like it. I'm really grateful that I found this pin. So I will link everything below. And thanks so much for watching. Fly high, Pooh Bear.